Okay, so today we're going to dive into a really fascinating theological argument. We're going to walk through one Christian's line of reasoning for why they believe the Quran doesn't quite fulfill its own claim to confirm earlier scriptures, and we'll see how that leads them to a very specific conclusion.
You know, this all boils down to a really big question, one that a lot of people of faith grapple with. When two sacred texts seem to say different things, how do you figure out which one to follow? We're about to unpack one person's very methodical approach to finding an answer.
All right, so where does this whole argument kick off? Well, it actually starts with a claim from inside the Quran itself. It's a message aimed squarely at Christians and Jews, who are often called the people of the book.
So the person making this argument points to verses just like this one, and the phrase to really lock onto here is confirming that which is with you. The understanding is that the Quran is saying it validates the scriptures that Christians and Jews already have, the Torah and the Gospel.
Okay, so if the Quran says it confirms the older books, what's the next logical step? Well, the speaker suggests a pretty straightforward test. Let's compare them. If it's a confirmation, then the stories about the prophets in the Quran should line up with the stories in the Torah. This sets the stage for a direct head-to-head comparison.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because we can see how this test works using a story that pretty much everyone knows, a story that shows up in both traditions, the story of Joseph. This is going to be our test case.
Okay, so first up, let's look at the Quran's telling of the story. In this version, when the brothers show up with that bloody shirt, their father, Jacob, he's not buying it. He immediately smells a rat. He senses they're lying, and he holds on to the belief that Joseph is still alive out there somewhere.
But then you flip over to the account in the Torah, in the book of Genesis, and the story takes a completely different turn. When Jacob sees that same bloody coat, he is absolutely devastated. He's convinced a wild animal got to Joseph, and he goes into this deep, long period of mourning, believing his son is gone for good.
So when you put them right next to each other like this, the issue just jumps right out at you, doesn't it? On this one, really critical detail, what Jacob believed. The two books say the exact opposite. One says he believed Joseph was alive, the other says he believed Joseph was dead.
I mean, from a logic perspective, this is what you call a straight-up contradiction. A statement can't be true and not true at the same time. So for the person making this case, the Quran isn't confirming the Torah here. In fact, it's doing the exact opposite. It's contradicting it.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, how is a contradiction like this explained? Well, the speaker says that when they bring this up with their Muslim friends, a pretty common answer comes up that's meant to resolve this exact problem.
And that answer is the idea of corruption. The argument goes something like this. The original Torah, the one from way back when, would have matched the Quran perfectly. But the one we have now, it's been changed over the centuries. It's been corrupted. And this is where things get really cool, because the conversation shifts from just theology to actual physical archaeology. The speaker's response to this idea of corruption, well, it relies on a huge historical discovery.
In that key piece of evidence, the Dead Sea Scrolls. If you haven't heard of them, they're basically this incredible treasure trove of ancient texts found in caves, literally the oldest copies we have of many parts of the Bible.
Now this timeline, this is absolutely crucial to the argument. Look at the dates. The Dead Sea Scrolls were written down and tucked away in caves hundreds of years before the Quran even began to be revealed. They're like a time capsule, a snapshot of the text from well before the 7th century. And here's the kicker. When scholars look at the story of Joseph in those ancient Dead Sea Scrolls and compare it to the Torah we read today, they're basically the same. The story reads just like it does in a modern version. That suggests the text was pretty stable, both before and after the time of Islam's origins.
So to really test that idea of corruption, the speaker asks us to do a little thought experiment. Just think for a second. What would it actually take to corrupt every single copy of the Torah on the planet?
I mean, think about the logistics here. You'd have to first write a new, altered Torah, then convince every single rabbi all over the world to adopt it, then somehow distribute these new copies without printers or the internet, and on top of all that, you'd have to hunt down and destroy every single old scroll. It's a massive, massive undertaking, and there's no historical record of anything like it.
So you can see how this one story about Joseph isn't really just about Joseph. It's being used to make a much bigger point about how new religious claims can be tested against the scriptures that are already established.
And the speaker is quick to point out that this way of thinking isn't unique to them. It happens in other faiths too. For instance, many mainstream Christians reject the Book of Mormon because they say it contradicts the Bible.
In a similar way, many mainstream Muslims reject Ahmadiyya teachings because they believe it goes against the Quran's doctrine that Muhammad is the final prophet.
So, let's just pull all this together. Here's the argument in a nutshell. The Quran claims it confirms the Torah, but a side-by-side test case seems to show a contradiction. The most common counterargument, that the Torah was corrupted, is challenged by archaeological evidence like the Dead Sea Scrolls. So, from this point of view, that initial claim of confirmation just isn't met.
And that really leaves us with a big idea to chew on, doesn't it? This whole argument is built on the intersection of faith, history, and physical evidence. It really makes you think, how much does tangible proof, like an ancient scroll, actually shape, challenge, or even reinforce what we believe about the spiritual world?